Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is today a replacement for our uh, um, study on Wednesday. And Today, God willing, we're going to be reading from Surah 26, verse 41. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'll seek refuge in God from sin and rejected. Okay, verse 41. When the magicians came, they said to Pharaoh, "Do we get paid if we are the winners?" He said, "Yes, indeed you will even be close to me." Moses said to them, "Throw what you're going to throw." They threw their ropes and sticks and said, "By Pharaoh's majesty, we will be the victors." Moses threw his staff, whereupon it swallowed what they fabricated. The experts see the truth. The magicians fell prostrate. They said, "We believe in the Lord of the universe, the Lord of Moses and Aaron." He said, "Did you believe with him before I gave you permission? He must be your teacher who taught you magic. You will surely find out. I will cut your hands and feet on alternate sides. I will crucify you all." They said, "This will not change our decision. To our Lord we will return. We hope that our Lord will forgive us our sins, especially that we are the first believers." We inspired Moses, "Travel with my servants, you will be pursued." Pharaoh sent to the city callers, proclaiming, "This is a small gang. They are now opposing us. Let us all beware of them." Okay. So, a couple of things we notice here. So this is starting from the point where, Moses wanted to challenge Pharaoh, and he decided to gather the magicians to compete with the miracles that God gave to Moses. This is how arrogant uh, he was, and that he wanted to fight God with magic of these poor magicians. And and the people who were the magicians, I mean, obviously they did not expect, anything other than, just Pharaoh, giving them a better position and some money. Well, they were just probably getting they didn't even know if they were getting paid. It's like, are we gonna get paid for this? Because with them, like, obviously, they would exploit the people. Obviously they weren't paid for the kind of amount of work that they will get these slaves to do. And he said, "Yeah, you'll even be close to me." And then you can see when they're about to do it, they say, "By Pharaoh's majesty," like, instead of like saying by God or something like that. I mean, these people were supposed to expected to, almost worship them, Pharaoh, as a god. uh, and But you see that, when they did their magic, I mean, this magic was just nothing but just, a trick, tricking the eye into thinking that the ropes and sticks were moving. I mean, you can move them in a certain way that, it looks like that to the eye, and that's all there was. But when the magicians saw what the miracle that God gave to Moses, the magicians recognized the truth and they fell prostrate and they believed in God. I mean, it really strengthened their faith. that um, you can see that when Pharaoh basically threatened them, that, "Why did you believe with him without my permission? I will crucify you. I'll cut your hands and feet on alternate sides." I mean, this is a real threat that they received right away, a form of persecution, right after they believed in God. And but this really strengthened their faith when they saw the miracle, because you can see that they said, this will not change our decision. God will forgive us, and we're returning to him we are believers. So their faith was really strong at the time because they saw the miracle. And I think that for us, it should be the same way when we see the Quran's mathematical miracle. I mean, it should be a lot more, because it wasn't even 1/10 of what we have, right? But not only did confirm, because not only does confirm Moses' miracles, it confirms all the previous miracles, and it's a physical, tangible proof. I mean, this proof was limited in time and space. So when they saw it, their faith was strengthened, and then it was gone, and then they were almost backsliding and reverting. Um, you know, but we see that uh, we have a physical, tangible evidence. Um, we have a physical, tangible evidence that is perpetual, and we can witness it any time. So, so we should be in that state constantly, that we see these people at this moment when they're standing in front of, the biggest tyrant on earth, the most powerful tyrant on earth, and he's threatening them to crucify them and cut their hands and feet, and uh, their faith is so strong that they're standing up against him, and they're saying, "We don't care what you do at this point. We believe." Um, and I think that's great. That's a good lesson for us. But it didn't stay that way for these people. Obviously, they they were kind of like wobbly in their faith, as we can see in the rest of the story. Uh, and we can see how um, Pharaoh described these people. Uh, obviously lies, but said, "This is a small gang. They are now opposing us. Let us all beware of them." You know, and if you if you've noticed, I mean, when someone speaks the truth, first of all, the believers are always in the minority. They are the minority of the minority. But when they stand up against falsehood and these people, I mean, this is normally how people describe them. You know, it's a small gang. I mean, first of all, whether you're small or big, that shouldn't matter if you're standing up for the truth. But it's just a small. You're just trying to belittle them and um, make them appear like, just because they're small, that means that it doesn't count. They're stupid or something. They're astray. But small doesn't matter. Um, and and then they're calling it a gang of people that are just opposing us. And so this is sort of how, you know if you see uh, a cult, I mean, if you go against it, I mean, this is pretty much the kind of uh, uh, description a person who will stand up against it receives. Because they're now opposing us. Let us all beware of them. It's just a small gang. And then it continues. So I'm going to read, God willing, uh, verse 57: the inevitable retribution. Consequently, we deprived them of gardens and springs, and treasures, and an honorable position. Then we made it an inheritance for the children of Israel. They pursued them towards the east. When both parties saw each other, Moses' people said, "We will be caught." He said, "No way, my Lord is with me. He will guide me." We then inspired Moses, "Strike the sea with your staff." Whereupon it parted. Each part was like a great hill. We then delivered them all. We thus saved Moses and all those who were with him, and we drowned the others. This should be a sufficient proof, but most people are not believers. Most assuredly, your Lord is the Almighty, most merciful. Okay, and so what we see here is typical of what happens when someone opposes God. You know, um, when someone decides to oppose God because of their ego, despite the truth that they see, and they choose to remain blinded, their ego becomes their God, first of all, and they're blinded. But we can see the hell starts here. And I mean, God deprived them of the luxurious gardens and springs and treasures and everything, and He gave that to the children of Israel. It became the inheritance for these people, as God says here. And when they pursued them, God made them the losers. I mean, imagine like this kind of a situation. It's not just for the people of Moses. It can be for all of us. Imagine like, you're caught in a position like this where you have an army of people that are running after you, and then you reach the shore and there's no way for you to escape, and you know God will open a door for you somehow. A helicopter will come and rescue you or something like that. But nevertheless, God's system remains the same. That God will save the believers. This is His uh, system, that God says He always saves the believers, and He always gives retribution to the people who decide to oppose God. Obviously, it's a very, very serious thing, and we know the retribution now is not the same as with these people where the entire communities were being annihilated. Now, God, picks people one by one, because there's different variety of people that are scattered around. So now we have diseases like AIDS, cancer, all of these things, and where you're handpicked and annihilated, but the system remains the same. And God says this should be sufficient proof, but most people are not believers. I mean, this is a real event that took place in history, and if you have the time to do the research, first of all, the mathematical miracle proves everything is from God, so we know for a fact that this happened. But I mean, for others, historically speaking, I mean, obviously these were real people that existed in time, and this really happened. So this should really strengthen our faith. That something like that happens on this planet, where you're in a position like this and the sea just parts for you, and then once you cross it, just drowns the enemy. I mean, come on, like they have to, you have to really be an idiot for you to feel nothing. Like I remember like when I first saw the movie The Ten Commandments, and I saw this scene where the sea parts. It really like had a like um, very lasting effect on my memory. And every time I thought about God, it reminded me of that moment, in the movie. But it's not just a movie; it's real life, and this is what really happened. And so we should always keep that in mind, that if we find ourselves in a position like that, where the people uh, are opposing you and opposing God, and you're in the minority, whatever the situation is, God's system is that He annihilates the disbelievers, and He always saves the believers, because God is Almighty and most merciful, as it says in verse 68. Abraham, verse 69. Narrate to them Abraham's history. He said to his father and his people, "What is this? What is this you're worshiping?" They said, "We worship statues. We are totally devoted to them." He said, "Can they hear you when you implore? Can they benefit you or harm you?" They said, "No, but we found our parents doing this." He said, "Do you see these idols that you worship, you and your ancestors? I'm against them, for I'm devoted only to the Lord of the universe." The one who created me and guided me, the one who feeds me and waters me, and when I get sick, he heals me. The one who puts me to death, then brings me back to life. The one who hopefully will forgive my sins on the day of judgment. My Lord, grant me wisdom and include me with the righteous. Let the example I set for the future generations be a good one. Make me one of the inheritors of the blissful paradise, and forgive my father, for he has gone astray. And do not forsake me on the day of resurrection. That is the day when neither money nor children can help. Only those who come to God with their whole heart will be saved. Paradise will be presented to the righteous, hell will be set up for the strayers. So we know Abraham's history from the Quran. He was the father of submission. He was the one who um called us submitters initially, and uh, we see that how these people were worshiping statues, and despite knowing that they were worshiping statues, they were still worshiping them. And not only that, I mean, they were just hell bent on worshiping statues, uh, because they just wanted to follow their parents. They said no, but we found our parents doing this. And what do we see now? We see people doing the same thing, following their parents blindly, um, and something that Abraham was against. And they claim to follow Abraham by doing just that, following their parents blindly, which is an irony. But nevertheless, for the believers, I meant with circumcision. But nevertheless, for the believers, I mean, this is a great example, because we see that people will follow their parents blindly. It's a human tragedy as we know it, and Abraham took a stand against these idols, and he said, "I'm against them, for I'm devoted to the Lord of the universe. He's the one who created me. He's the one who waters me. He's the one who feeds me. When I get sick, he heals me. So God is the one who's doing everything. He puts me to death. He brings me back to life. He will hopefully forgive my sins on the day of resurrection." Um, and so even here, that I see a couple of things. One, it says, the verse that says, "When I get sick, he heals me." So, people, there's nothing in the Quran that that contradicts or changes God's laws. And what I mean by that is, when it says, "When I get sick, he heals me." So people use that to make the argument that just because Abraham said, "When I get sick, he heals me," that pretty much saying God is the healer, and he has the power to heal us. People were saying that perfect health does not exist because Abraham was not an idol worshiper, and he said, "When I get sick, he heals me." But the thing is that they forget that admission tests and pinches also apply to Abraham and all prophets and messengers. So Abraham could be in his admission test, for example, technically speaking, and he could get sick and God could heal him, knowing that he's a proven worshiper of God alone, as we know with Job. Or, Abraham could forget something, and he could get a pinch, he could get sick temporarily for like a day or two, even maybe, and then he realized something, and then he you know uh, uh, step back into God's kingdom. But the thing is, people use this verse to justify things like people getting cancer and AIDS and things like that we just talked about, people getting annihilated with. And the Messenger of the Covenant clearly talks about it in the video King of Chaos. If you have any doubts about it, I highly encourage you all to go and watch it, The King of Chaos by Dr. Rashad Khalifa. And so God gives us perfect health, wealth, and happiness. And the way he does it, obviously, if you're with God, you will not get sick. God will protect you and save you. If you are sick and you enter God's kingdom, He will heal you. Or if you pass your admission test and you're sick, God will heal you. Of course, who else is going to heal you? God is the only one uh, who does that, and all good comes from God. And God is the one who puts us to death and brings us back to life. We all have a number, a day, I mean, in time that we're supposed to live in this world, and that's it. And we can't increase it or decrease it. It's already predetermined. We can do nothing to change it. We cannot live longer or anything like that. Or a day or even an hour. We have a specific amount of time, and when we finish that, that's it. And nobody can change that. So, anyways, that's kind of a different tangent, but uh, at least we know that when our time comes to an end, our time is up. God is the one who you know will take us. And then the verse actually says, "The one who puts me to death then brings me back to life." And so obviously, we witness death and resurrection every day. When you go to sleep, you actually go into a different dimension, and then your soul uh, is resurrected in the morning. Your body's resurrected in the morning, and your soul comes back, and you're in a different, you're back to reality. Um, and so that's kind of like what death is like. So he puts us to death every day and resurrects us back to life. And Abraham, you know, who was God's beloved friend, God calls his beloved friend, and who was never an idol worshiper, and God gave him the practices of submission. He is saying the one about God. He's saying the one who will hopefully forgive my sins on the day of judgment. Like that's how humble we should be. Like other an ordinary person, for example, in place of Abraham, if he had all of these blessings, I mean, would be so sure that he's reserved a spot in the high heaven, right? And we know that Abraham was so humble that he's saying the one who will hopefully forgive my sins on the day of judgment. So that's how we should be. That we should hope that God will forgive our sins, not that we're the elite of the elite and the high heaven is reserved for us, and um, you know stuff like that. um, so, and then he says, "Let the example I set for the future generations be a good one." And we know Abraham set the best. I mean, one of the best examples. Abraham's example. We see that. It says he was harsh and stern with the believers, and uh, harsh and stern with the disbelievers, and kind and compassionate with the believers. And he disowned his father because he was an idol worshiper, and he was fighting God. And so this is the example that we see. And he was a submitter, and God gave him all the practice, and we follow them. And uh, uh, but we see verse 86, he made a mistake where he said that forgive my father for he's gone astray. His father was an idol worshiper. So once you know someone's an idol worshiper, and this is pointed out in another verse in the Quran, but once you know someone's an idol worshiper, Abraham made this mistake here, um, and he and we can see that clearly here. I mean, this could be a good argument, when Abraham made this mistake, for example, by asking forgiveness for an idol worshiper, which he was not supposed to do. He could get sick there, and then he could realize his mistake, and God could heal him, technically speaking, right? So things like that, we know he made mistakes, and this is where he made a mistake in his personal life, obviously, not by giving us the wrong message. which the messengers don't do. Their job is to just deliver the message. But we see here he made a mistake in his personal life by asking forgiveness for a disbeliever, idol worshiper who was his father. But nevertheless, he was a very kind. God says that Abraham was extremely kind and clement, but he ended up disowning his father because his father was against God, you know. And even though we're supposed to honor our parents, if our parents are fighting the message, um, you know, then we're supposed to disown them. And that's what Abraham did. Um, and forgive my father, for he has gone astray, and do not forsake me on the day of resurrection. That is the day when neither money nor children can help. Only those who come to God with their whole heart will be saved. Paradise will be presented to the righteous, hell will be set up for the strayers. So I like how it says only those who come to God with their whole heart will be saved. You know, you can't be you can't have, you know, God says he has not given a man two hearts in his chest, you know. So you have to be devoted only to God alone. I mean, you can't have another God besides God, and you know, have your loyalties divided. You know, so you do this for one God, and you do this for other God. I mean, of course, you love, you know, people in this world, but you love them uh, because God tells you to love them for the sake of God. You regard everybody and you love, you know, everyone, but you know, the believers love God the most. And you know, even everything else that they do in life, you know, it's goes back to God. So really everything is, you know, goes back to God. It's about God, loving God. And so people who have devoted their life absolutely to God alone, who are dedicated themselves to God alone, will be saved. I mean, people who are looking out for their you know, reputation, or the reputation of their family, or the city where they live, or the community, or their friends, you know, and or their family or their boss, you know, when they have to choose between God and them, and they sometimes choose God and sometimes choose them, you know, those people are not gonna make it. People who are gonna make it are the ones who are absolutely 100%, you know, will choose God every time. um, you know, they're devoted to God alone, and they'll make the right choice consistently. Those are the people that, you know, God saves, and only those who come to God with their whole heart will be saved. So we have to be devoted absolutely to God alone. You know, nothing else comes before God and the truth. Everything else is secondary. Uh, Verse 92: They will disown their idols. They will be asked, "Where are the idols you had worship beside God? Can they help themselves? Can they help you now? Can they help themselves? They will be thrown therein together with the strayers and all of Satan's soldiers. They will say as they feud therein, by God, we were far astray. How could we set you up to rank with the Lord of the universe? Those who misled us were wicked. Now we have no intercessors, nor a single close friend. If only we could get another chance, we would then believe. This should be a good lesson, but most people are not believers. Your Lord is the Almighty, most merciful." So this is, God describes what happens on the day of judgment. Of course, all these people who idolize each other and 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 other entities besides God, I mean, we're just really idolizing Satan. And then uh, these people, when they're thrown therein with all of Satan's soldiers, you know, and they feud therein, uh, so this is interesting, you know. I mean, you have a hell, and then you have high heaven and low heaven, and then you have you know, one for the jinns and then one for the humans. But we don't see a different hell for the jinns. You know, the jinns and the humans will be in the same hell. And I mean, I think that alone would be more tormenting than anything else, to know that you're going to share the same place with all these demons for eternity. You know, may God save us from that. You know, in itself is really chilling. Um, but they'll all be thrown there and they'll feud with one another, fight with one another, argue, for eternity. And then they'll just be full of remorse and regrets. They're just saying, oh, if we could get another chance. Now we don't even have a single close friend. I mean, people do so much. It's ridiculous just to keep their friendships in this world. But what happens on the day of judgment? They're left alone in hell without a single close friend, with all these demons. And that, so God shows us that this is the reality of what's really going to happen. I mean, if you're going to live this life, you better make your choices wisely and think long term, not just in this world. You have to believe in the hereafter. Think about the repercussions of your choices that you're making in this world. Verse 1 of 5, Noah. The people of Noah disbelieved the messengers. Their brother Noah said to them, would you not be righteous? I am an honest messenger to you. You shall reverence God and obey me. I do not ask you for any wage. My wage comes from the Lord of the universe. You shall reverence God and obey me. They said, how can we believe with you when the worst among us have followed you? He said, how do I know what they did? Their judgment rests only with God, with my Lord, if you could perceive. I will never dismiss the believers. I am no more than a clarifying warner. They said, unless you refrain on Noah, you will be stoned. He said, my Lord, my people have disbelieved me. Grant me victory against them, and deliver me and my company of believers. We delivered him and those who accompanied him in the loaded ark. Then we drowned the others. This should be a lesson, but most people are not believers. Most assuredly, your Lord is Almighty, most merciful. So as you can see, the statement, this should be a lesson, but most people are not believers. Most assuredly, your Lord is Almighty, most merciful, is repeated for most of these statements that I have read. At least a couple of times it was mentioned. So all of these things, including the description of hell, it says the same thing. Including Abraham, it says the same thing. Moses, it says the same thing. And Noah, it says the same thing, and forward, right? And so all these are lessons for us, all these examples for us to uh, really think about it. And from these different examples, we just not just with one example, with multiple examples that God has taught us, with these precedents, it should really strengthen our faith. Like just the example of Noah also, is very similar to that of Moses. Noah came with the message. People disbelieved him. People ridiculed him. People belittled him, not just him, but people who followed him, and they judged the religion and the truth based on their judgment of the people who followed, wrong judgment of the people who followed him. And then, because of their bias, for some people, it doesn't matter if you speak the truth. If they don't like you, they're not going to believe you. But if someone really that they want or they really like tells them, they might listen to him, you know, which is not the way it should be. Like if a poor man comes to you and he says, worship God alone, you might not listen to him. And then let's say the richest man in the world comes in at your door and says, worship God alone. And you're like, oh, wow, this man really has a lot of wisdom. And, he says such great words. So things like that, we shouldn't be like that. But these people obviously judge Noah by the quality of people that were around him. Like, oh, these are the worst people, they're low life people, probably to them, and they're like, oh, they followed you. I mean, why should we follow this religion, you know? And people do that nowadays too. They're like, oh, this religion, all these Arabs smelling of camels and stuff, things like that. You hear that, but obviously we know that it doesn't matter whether somebody followed it or not. I mean, first of all, most of those people don't follow it, but even if they did, it shouldn't repel you from following the religion if there's nothing wrong with the truth. You should judge the message based on the message and not based on who's following it and who isn't. That's not good logic. And so, but we see the story is consistent. Eventually, what happened is, God made people of Noah the winners. He he gave prophets and messengers to his family. He made them, um, a lesson in history, everlasting lessons. And other people, we don't even know their names, and they were drowned in history, and they're in eternal misery. So this is God's system. And so with this, I'd like to end. And if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free.
Assalamu alaikum, Salãmun. Masha Allah,
Alaikum.
great study.
Mashallah,
Praise
thank
God.
you.
Where exactly did you end though?
I ended at verse 122.
Masha Allah. Okay. You read quite a bit.
Yeah.
Masha Allah, I have a comment.
Hmm.
Uh, praise God. I really like the way you described it. That when the experts see the truth,
Hmm.
the magicians fell prostrate. They said, "We believe in the Lord of the universe." So, and how um, Pharaoh reacted to their, submission and
Hmm.
threatened them to kill them immediately. And they were so sure, their certainty was so much there that they absolutely did not fear anything because they knew,
Hmm.
uh, even though the message wasn't really delivered to them, but they could just, God had inspired them, mashallah, because they
Hmm.
obviously deserved it.
Hmm.
That if they die, they will even have better ranks at God. So they had no fear,
Hmm.
mashallah, and that how we should be thinking like that because we see the miracle. Uh, we absolutely are sure about God and His angels here and here the hereafter, and we should be that confident at
Hmm.
all the time. We have to have faith and trust in God, not conditional, not part time. That when we are tested, we just get scared or
Hmm.
become hopeless. We should be like solid like that, mashallah, because the
Hmm.
miracle is in front of our eyes at all times. So really good
Good
point, praise
point.
God.
Mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, mashallah, Salman, very good study.
Thank you.
I have a question. This one place when God says that Arabs were calling themselves believers, and God says that do not call yourself believer. Belief has not entered your heart. So it's a long process where you become a submitter, and then you increase your belief to reach the point of certainty. But here we see example of these magicians. They when you turn on a light, it's just like a switch, and it's not a gradual improvement. They absolutely become certain to the point, like you guys, better than you explained very well, that they're ready to. They don't care because that's an absolute certainty where the person Pharaoh, his background, he's not bluffing, or he's not he's gonna do it because his background, that he what he did to the people and the children of Israel, the boys he used to, how they did all that. So that this person is capable of doing. This person is not joking. You're not like thinking, oh yeah, he's just saying that he's not going to do it. So there, that explains that their level of certainty was so high in just a flick of. So do you think that when you compare to the Arab and the gradual improvement versus this, uh, is there any other place God says about any other community or something like that they reach the point of certainty in just in one act?
Mm. Well, I mean, the way I see it, I mean, if you look at the description of the children of Israel,
Hmm.
like, this is just the beginning when they just saw it, they're like super excited. And you
Right.
can see that with people too who become submitters, like at first, some people will
Right.
become extremely enthusiastic and stuff, but people are not steadfast. And we can see that even with these people, they digressed really quickly. So it's not like they actually reached certainty, all of them, and they stayed there. We know like one point Moses was left with only two believers, and he said,
Yes.
"Let me part company with the wicked people," and they wandered for like 40 years. Most of these people. So just a very this was just like the way I see it, it's just like a moment in time where they saw the miracle and it really strengthened their faith. But obviously, I don't think that all of these magicians like became like true mu'mins at the time they saw the message. I mean, of course, certainty comes with worship, you know,
Right.
like
Right.
long-term certainty, permanently, being in that state. I mean, you have to worship God alone and grow your soul substantially to be in that position, right? It's not like how like people say there's love at first sight and they see someone and they're like, "Oh, I'm in love." But we know that that doesn't come until you know the person and you know their likes and dislikes and you've actually known everything about them. Then you actually get to love and hate the person. I mean, you might feel like you love them, for example, right? Just to like as a comparison, but it's not real love. So I mean, the way I see it is when here they saw the miracle. It really, yeah, for that moment in time, it really strengthened them by seeing the miracle, because that's what the miracle was for. But I see them no different from any other people in the sense that they had doubts and they digressed and they worshipped idols and they disobeyed Moses and they disregarded him and they followed opted for the worldly materials and all of these things, like. And if you see the entire history of the children of Israel in the Quran, I mean, you can see like, first of all, you see like really terrible examples, and then you also see that you see those same examples in people now, like just like the children of Israel, and we know like the story of the heifer, for example, and the same people, right? So
Oh yeah, Masha Allah, that's a very good explanation. Uh, it takes time to really settle the belief in our heart and reach the point of certainty. You have to also go through the test and stuff, I guess.
mhm.
Yeah.
And
Sorry. Were you going to say?
I just want to the conclusion that yes, I do see people get excited when they see the miracle, and they all, there's somebody I've talked about submission, and they were super excited, and they took the Quran and everything. But after a while, when you follow up with them, they just kind of, the excitement dies slowly, slowly. So to keep it going strong, it requires a lot of work. Uh, from worshiping and obeying and reading and going back, and God says like force yourself to be with those who day and night, I'm paraphrasing, remember God. So all these things comes together, that's when you really grow your soul, like growing from a seed to a whole giant tree. MashaAllah. Go ahead, I'm done.
Yeah. Um, that example shows that the difference between falsehood and the truth was recognized by the experts right away. So at that moment, they knew this was not humanly possible. So that brought them the belief in the message what actually Moses brought, mashallah, because they saw the miracle and they say like, this is has to be divine. So what I'm trying to say is that even though you know it definitely requires, but the certainty for this generation, uh, should be different. That's what I'm trying to get at. That um, like
Yeah,
yes,
because
we
our miracle is perpetual. Yeah.
perpetual. So all these miracles with other generations were restricted in time and place, and so even though the test happens, every generation was tested, right? After the messengers, um, and their faith was tested through time, and then people. But as long as the miracle is concerned and the proof is concerned that there is God and this is His book, and we hang on to this. Of course, God says in the Quran that we should know better that we will be tested, even though if we believe, we say we believe, then God says, you think you will be left alone to just, this is done, you're not done yet. So then the weaknesses we have, or we had, like in our previous, before becoming submitters or other society norms which are induced kind of in your head day and night, that this is how life should be and this is what the life is. But our view about life should be very much changed, like because we know the reality, the certainty is there, but we have to develop our soul. I think now it should work like that, right? But of course, then there are hypocrites who are exposed. People drop out. They really didn't grasp. They really didn't even become um, certain. I'm just trying to grasp the difference between this miracle and previous miracles. That how should we be behaving,
Mm.
knowing that it's there, but the test we are tested through weak times and not such good time, or extremely good times, that we stay steadfast and drop all idolatry. So yeah, Salman explained that at that moment, at that time, of course, like it dawned upon us, wow, subhanallah. For me, it was, oh, there is God. Like I was looking for other religions, did not like what Islam, the way Islam was presented to me, even though I was born in a Muslim Sunni family. And when I read this Quran, and it's not even about the miracle yet, somehow it was the right time that I opened the Quran and something I saw, and I realized this is a book of God, So, but then, the test begins. It was too much excitement, so much surety, but then you kind of get lost in the worldly things. And yeah, of course, the Satan then chases you day and night. Anyway, yeah, thank you.
So, yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing, that Satan doesn't leave these people, right? When you say you believe, now you become a target of Satan, because he knows you have the potential to potentially go to heaven now, and he has to try to, bring down as many people as he can. Once he realizes somebody has a chance, he's gonna pursue them, and he's gonna try to find your weak points, to study you, through which, he can exploit you through your weaknesses. And I mean, he knows that, he's an entity, that has centuries of experience studying humans, and he knows how to exploit them. So our only weapon is to remain devoted to God alone. And once, you see a little bit of you know crack there for, some affinity towards anyone other than God, some uh, uh, what is it? Some allegiance to anyone besides God, you know, he'll exploit it readily. And these traps, there's so many traps.
Yeah, God, when giving this message to us, the mankind, Quran, mashallah, these stories are not just fantasies or just to read and be amused. There are lessons in it, and especially Moses' story and Abraham's story. God has repeated Moses' story over and over in the Quran. There are so many lessons every time. Like when you're going to do the study, you're just going through the verses that you're going to talk about, and just kind of see if you have any questions comes up, and you just more and more stuff comes up. Uh, it really scares us. It should scare us because these magicians, they were certain, and then those children of Israel. So seeing this miracle, and then all the 9 profound miracles, lice, when that come, I mean the frog blood and all that. So they were witnessing too. I guess they were in the community that there are frogs coming from everywhere. There was blood rain, and then when Pharaoh goes to Moses and to pray to your God to remove it. And so this is not just like coincidence that, oh, okay, maybe it was time to go away. No. So over time, their belief should progress. And then those people, they went with Moses. And when they say, oh, Pharaoh is coming, they say, we're going to be caught. But Moses said that, no, my Lord is with me. So when they see the sea departing, so it's not like they never see the ocean before, uh, and seeing that water moving apart, and there's a pathway in between, and you cross through it. Then not the miracle didn't stop there. There was man and salva, and then the cloud used to follow them, keep them shade. The water, when God says to strike the staff, and I think there were 12 tribes, I guess, their water fountain for everyone. I mean, so these are not coincidence. So they've seen a lot of miracles. And the scary part is that you see the statement that makes when they went to when God says to enter the gates, and the statement they make is such a horrible. I'm paraphrasing. They say to the Moses that you and your Lord go fight. We are waiting here. Just imagine the horrendous statement that was made. I mean, this is such a disrespectful statement after seeing all these miracles and uttering this statement that you and your Lord go fight. We are waiting here. I mean, that is just gives your bone, like chills down your bones that this can't happen. These are people. We are people. And we should learn from this that out of so many people, after seeing so many miracles, only 2 people say that we should follow God. And the scary part is that, what guarantee do we have? Like, I mean, we think that we took the miracle of 19, we accepted the submission, we accepted this and that. I mean, I tried to point out this point in the last conference, and people shut me down like, oh, don't worry, God is merciful. I mean, the same thing I've been hearing all my life, that God is merciful, He'll forgive you. Yes, God is merciful, but look at these examples, only 2 people. What guarantee do we have? We should be worried every day. What if I don't become that 2 people? It's like there's a university, and it's so hard to get in, so hard to get in, and maybe 1% people comes get in that university. Out of 100 people apply, only 1% gets in, and out of those 1%, like maybe 1% passes. So what are the chances of anyone to pass? So the test gets down to this level. So we should be learning from these stories and never let our guard down and try our best to obey God. MashaAllah. That's my
Mm,
point.
yeah. Yeah, and the interesting thing is that all of these people that came down as humans, they all believed that they were going to pass the test. That's why they took the chance. All of these people thought that they can get in the university, like the example you gave. But we know, like, the minority of the minority is going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the people that The kind of people you're talking about that will tell you that, don't worry about it, it's all good. Like those are the kind of people that God describes in the Quran that we were transgressing and ignorant, because we overestimated ourselves that, we're doing good, and we're just doing our daily prayers and stuff, and we're saying we worshiping God alone, and everything's good. Doesn't really work that way. Obviously, these people have to study more and understand it more deeply to see what's going on and see how Satan has exploited people in the past, and we can see how he's doing it now. So
Yeah, we should really worry that what if
yeah,
I'm not that two
yeah,
people?
yeah. I mean, God says, he has made the human being to work hard to redeem himself, right?
Right.
And then God says the believers, they worry about the hour. Why does God talk about a believer staying up at night, remembering God, commemorating Him, asking Him for forgiveness, and
Hmm.
asking Him to save him and stuff like that at night? Rarely all of this because there's a reason. They're not just worried about it for no reason. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I read before that prophet's wife, God tells them that you're wife of prophets, and I'm just paraphrasing that if you do something wrong, the retribution will be double for you guys. So
Mm,
then last cross study that you were doing about righteous people, and that's trying. I mean, I mean, you read through it, but you never pay attention. I
mm,
mean, that for righteous people, if they make mistake, the retribution for them is also double. Wow,
mm.
that's
Yeah,
scary.
because we know more. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, God says, like, to the children of Israel that, even though we did not show them 1/10 of the miracle we have given to this generation, how terrible was my retribution when they disbelieved, right? So greater miracles bring greater responsibility as well, and us being so close and then getting one of the great miracles that God calls the ultimate miracle, like the messenger put the subtitle, the ultimate miracle, I mean, we have the ultimate responsibility like of all humans in history now, so it's a huge responsibility really when you think about it. We're living in the age of information, like we really don't have much of an excuse. I mean, yeah, God is forgiver, most merciful, and he will overlook all of our sins, but obviously he's not responsible when we mess up, like knowingly on our part, and we're disregarding, and we tend to abuse God's mercy and forgiveness, then we end up paying for it. I mean, um, it's not easy because obviously for you to be a submitter devoted to God alone, you have to really be like 100%. You have to be 100% devoted. Like if you're 90% or 80%, and then 20% is somewhere else, then you're not gonna, uh, you know, be there because you're not absolutely devoted to God alone. It has to be 100% devotion. I mean, you have to choose God always and always do the right thing. I mean, when just entering God's kingdom, you can't enter God's kingdom if you are not going to say, God, I'm going to follow you 100%, like you can't say, okay, I'm going to do 90% or 80%, and then you're doing 20% wrongs, and then you expect God to, let you enter. I mean, you have to have a firm repentance that, from now on, I'm going to do everything you say, and then you would enter God's kingdom because that makes you someone who is proven. But yeah, of course, we might make mistakes here and there and God overlooks, but those are mistakes that you don't make on purpose. Those are things that may just happen out of ignorance. And God will totally, God willing, forgive those, hopefully, but we don't compromise and, mix good deeds with bad deeds, like knowingly. mm,
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum.
Alaykum salam.
I have a question
Mm-hmm,
about verse 80. It
mm-hmm,
said, and when I get sick, he heals me.
mm-hmm,
And my question is about people who refuse, um, medicine or help, medical help, and they choose just pray to God instead,
mm-hmm,
and what do you think about these people? Because I saw the commentary
mm-hmm,
talking about this. Some people, Christian people, who refuse this medical help for their kids, and as a result, their kids get, no, they dies.
mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about such belief?
That's a good question. Um, we shouldn't test God. Like, I mean, of course, God is the one who heals us, but we also know that God is the one who created all these other things for us. Like, God is the one who created mechanics, for example. Like, when your car breaks down, why do you have to go to a mechanic? Because God is the one who all good comes from God. I mean, if your car is messed up, who's the one who fixes your car? Is it the mechanic or is it God? Of course, the answer is God. Now, the thing is that God controls the hands of the mechanic,
Mm,
and he controls the same way he controls everything that goes wrong in your car. It's the exact same thing with the human body too. I mean, the human body is a submitter to God, just like and it's part of the earth, just like God, just like the car is. It's all part of the earth, and it's all run based on God's system, and it's all controlled divinely by God. So, if you are not going to go to a doctor, then you might as well not have a plumber. If your bathroom is clogged, you don't go call a plumber because God is the one who's going to fix
mm,
it.
yeah.
And so, I mean, but the thing is that people, we know when we have examples from the Messenger of the Covenant, for example, where someone had a headache and he gave him a painkiller to take, and then he took it, but then he came back and said, I'm sorry, I made a big mistake. We should have said Bismillah. I should have told you to say Bismillah before taking it. But what that teaches us is that, yeah, I mean, you take the medicine, you say God's name on it, and then you take it. God is the one who will heal you, but you have to do your part in fixing the situation, and then ask God to save you. So the thing is that if it's a disease, or if it's a surgery, or if it's a small cold or whatever it is. I mean, you're not doing anything wrong by taking a medication, as long as you don't give it power. The ultimate power has to, I mean, ultimate power belongs to God. And we know anything, if you think that anything besides God can benefit you or harm you in any way, then you're setting it up as a God besides God. So the thing is that these people don't understand the distinction between, like, you know, giving something power versus just doing it. For example, like taking the medication. You know, taking the medication is not wrong, but thinking that the medication is what has the power to heal you or harm you, that's the idol worship part. And this we can do in many other ways. But the thing is, this thing is just a way of making the religion difficult for people and repelling them, from the religion and setting a bad example. Of course, especially as parents, we responsible parents, will take care of their kids, and if they're sick, they need medical attention. They should give medical attention. Like for example, God is the one who says He will protect us, right? But God says in the Quran that He taught us how to make shields to protect us in war. Now, if God is our protector, why are we going and making shields then, right? Because we shouldn't be making shields. We just say, oh, God is the one who's going to protect you. If somebody comes, an angel is going to come and stop the sword or whatever it is, and I don't need to have any kind of protection. But, that's not true. God has created these things, we make, he says he taught David, how to make shields and wars for wars and stuff, armor and stuff like that, So God created all these things for our benefit. And as long as we give the power to God, there's nothing wrong in using these things. These are all blessings from God.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome. Shah.
Yeah. Also, was there an incident when David prayed to God? It was Zechariah, I think. God says, strike the ground, and then this will heal you. Also, at the same time, mentioned the covenant. There was one incident. Somebody had a headache, so he hands them the pill, and he forget to say, "Inshallah, this pill will make you feel better." And then he repents and fall prostrate. So when you take medicine, your focus should be 100% that God is going to heal me through this medicine or anything. Masha Allah.
I think you're talking about Job.
Yeah, well, I think it was Job. I'm not confusing
Mm,
somebody.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And God says He created honey, for example.
Right.
So honey is a medicine. So traditional medicine, some people will like to call it, right? But it's a medicine for certain allergies. And it says from their bellies. This is Surah 16, verse 69. It says they then eat from all the fruits following the design of your Lord precisely. From their bellies comes a drink of different colors, wherein there is healing for the people. God created these things with healing properties, for example, if you take medicine or something. So, but ultimately we thank God for everything. And then yeah, this was Job in verse 38, verse 42. Um, and yeah, and then also gave the example of the pill from the messenger in the previous comment. So
Yeah, and the messenger's could have said that, oh, you cannot take medicine.
yeah.
You need to rely on God. So,
Hmm.
right, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people literally died. I mean, they were supposed to die anyways, but when their time came. But the thing is, people, uninformed, ignorant people have given advice like this to other submitters, you know, and they are responsible for taking such advice, and then they obviously, were didn't deserve to be healed and stuff too. But the thing is, like, they suffered because of it. People died because they decided that God is going to heal them. They don't need the medications, and then the disease just got worse and worse. But I mean, if it was all in accordance with God's will, but obviously, God says if you prohibit lawful things, it brings deprivation. So, these things are blessings. If you prohibit things that God didn't prohibit, then obviously you make your life harder. So, I think it's just me, Adam, Huda. Um, I think Huda is gone. So, if you guys have any more comments um, or questions about these verses, if not, then maybe we can end the stream. What do you guys think? And end the study. Yeah.
I think inshallah. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Okay. So I think next person is gonna be Nudrat, for because you were last, right, for teaching.
Yeah.
So it's probably her turn. Okay. So thank you guys for joining us. Our next study, God willing, is gonna be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and God willing, we'll see you then. God bless you guys. Assalamu alaikum.